Hey guys, I'm back here with you to read chapter 10 of Things Fall Apart. Large crowds began to gather on the village Elo as soon as the edge had worn off the sun's heat and it was no longer painful on the body. Most communal ceremonies took place at that time of the day, so that even when it was said that a ceremony would begin after the midday meal, everyone understood that it would begin a long time later, when the sun's heat had softened. It was clear from the way the crowd stood or sat that the ceremony was for men. There were many women, but they looked on from the fringe, like outsiders. The titled men and elders sat on their stools, waiting for the trials to begin. In front of them was a row of stools on which nobody sat. There were 9 of them. 2 little groups of people stood at a respectable distance beyond the stools. They faced the elders. There were 3 men in one group and 3 men and 1 woman in the other. The woman was Migbifo, and the 3 men with her were her brothers. In the other group were her husband, Uzowulu, and his relatives. Migbifo and her brothers were as still as statues, into whose faces the artist has molded defiance. Uzowulu and his relative, on the other hand, were whispering together. It looked like whispering, but they were really talking at the tops of their voices. Everybody in the crowd was talking. It was like the market. From a distance, the noise was a deep rumble carried by the wind. An iron gong sounded, setting up a wave of expectation in the crowd. Everyone looked in the direction of the Igwugwu house. Gong, 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 gong went the gong, and a powerful flute blew a high-pitched blast. Then came the voices of the Igwugwu, guttural and awesome. Remember, the Igwugwu made an appearance earlier in the book. It is an Igbo term. It is also found in the glossary at the back of the book, but basically they were men in the village who masqueraded as spirits, like ancestral spirits. So they literally wore masks, and they were just a big part of their religious traditions. The wave struck the women and children, and there was a backward stampede. But it was momentary. They were already far enough where they stood, and there was room for running away if any of the Igwugwu should go towards them. So it sounds like a lot of the people, especially the women and children, were actually afraid of the Igwugwu. The drum sounded again, and the flute blew. The Igwugwu house was now a pandemonium of quavering voices. Are you oyam die filled the air as the spirits of the ancestors just emerged from the earth greeted themselves in their esoteric language. The Igwugwu house into which they emerged faced the forest, away from the crowd, who saw only its back with the many-colored patterns and drawings done by specially chosen women at regular intervals. These women never saw the inside of the hut. No woman ever did. They scrubbed and painted the outside walls under the supervision of men. If they imagined what was inside, they kept their imagination to themselves. No woman ever asked questions about the most powerful and the most secret cult in the clan. Aru oyam dai flew around the dark, closed hut like tongues of fire. The ancestral spirits of the clan were abroad. The metal gong beat continuously now, and the flute, shrill and powerful, floated on the chaos. And then the Igwugwu appeared. The women and children set up a great shout and took to their heels. It was instinctive. A woman fled as soon as an Igwugwu came in sight. And when, as on that day, 9 of the greatest masked spirits in the clan came out together, it was a terrifying spectacle. Even Migbifo took to her heels and had to be restrained by her brothers. Each of the 9 Igwugwu represented a village of the clan. Their leader was called Evil Forest. Smoke poured out of his head. The 9 villages of Umuofia had grown out of the 9 sons of the first father of the clan. Evil Forest represented the village of Umuera, or the children of Ero, who was the eldest of the 9 sons. Umuofia Kuwenu, shouted the leading Igwugwu, pushing the air with his Rafaya arms. The elders of the clan replied, Ya! Umuofia Kuwenu! Ya! Umuofia Kuwenu! Ya! Evil Forest then thrust the pointed end of his rattling staff into the earth, and it began to shake and rattle like something agitated with a metallic life. He took the first of the empty stools, and the 8 other Igloo began to sit in order of seniority after him. Okonkwo's wives, and perhaps other women as well, might have noticed that the second Igloo had the springy walk of Okonkwo. This suggests to us Western readers that the Igloo, which had so much mystery for the people of the Igbo tribe, was actually comprised of the Igbo men who were dressed up as ancestral spirits. So this is a really cool, like, showing us the difference between their perspective as members of the Igbo tribe and their beliefs in their religion versus our Western perspective, and how we have a different religious belief, so it affects, you know, how realistic this looks for us. They might also have noticed that Okonkwo was not among the titled men and elders who sat behind the row of Igloo. But if they thought these things, they kept them within themselves. The Igloo with the springy walk was one of the dead fathers of the clan. He looked terrible with a smoked raffia body, a huge wooden face painted white except for the round hollow eyes and the charred teeth that were as big as a man's fingers. On his head were 2 powerful horns. When all the Igloo had sat down and the sound of the many tiny bells and rattles on their bodies had subsided, Evil Forest addressed the 2 groups of people facing them. "Uzawulu's body, I salute you," he said. Spirits always addressed humans as bodies. Uzawulu bent down and touched the earth with his right hand as a sign of submission. "Our father, my hand has touched the ground," he said. "Uzawulu's body, do you know me?" asked the spirit. "How can I know you, father? You are beyond our knowledge." Evil Forest then turned to the other group and addressed the eldest of the 3 brothers. "The body of Odakwi, I greet you," he said, and Odakwi bent down and touched the earth. The hearing then began. So it sounds like they're at some sort of judicial court type trial. Uzawulu stepped forward and presented his case. "That woman standing there is my wife, Migbifo. I married her with my money and my yams. I do not owe my in-laws anything. I owe them no yams. I owe them no cocoa yams. One morning, 3 of them came to my house, beat me, and took my wife and children away. This happened in the rainy season. I have waited in vain for my wife to return. At last I went to my in-laws and said to them, 'You have taken back your sister. I didn't send her away. You yourselves took her. The law of the clan is that you should return her bride price.' But my wife's brothers said they had nothing to tell me, so I have brought the matter to the fathers of the clan. My case is finished. I salute you." "Your words are good," said the leader of the Igloo. "Let us hear Odakwi. His words may also be good." Odakwi was short and thick-set. He stepped forward, saluted the spirits, and began his story. So we have one side of this trial. And it does sound like this guy was he was wronged. That's how it sounds. Now we're going to hear the other side. This is a really interesting comment on perspective. So let's see what the author does here. "My in-law has told you that we went to his house, beat him up, and took our sister and her children away. All that is true." That's surprising that he's saying that. "He told you that he came to take back her bride price and we refused to give it to him. That also is true." So this is really interesting. This is kind of what he's saying here is an example of situational irony, which is one of the 3 types of irony. And with situational irony, we have a surprise ending, or something surprising happens, something unexpected happens. So we're hearing these 2 short little arguments that these men are making in this trial. And Odakwi, who is currently speaking, says things that are kind of surprising in here. He admits that the, I don't know if it's the defendant or whatever, but the guy that he's arguing with is right in those regards. Then he says, "Uzawulu is a beast." My sister lived with him for 9 years. During those years, no single day passed in the sky without his beating the woman. We've tried to settle their quarrels time without number, and on each occasion, Azuulu was guilty. It is a lie, Azuulu shouted. 2 years ago, continued Adakwi, when she was pregnant, he beat her until she miscarried. It's a lie. She miscarried after she had gone to sleep with her lover. So we're getting deeper into this kind of argument between the two of them. We are seeing the first man differently now that we know that he is beating his wife frequently, so much so that she actually miscarried at one point. Uzawulu's body, I salute you, said Evil Forest, silencing him. What kind of lover sleeps with a pregnant woman? There was a loud murmur of approbation from the crowd. Odakwi continued, last year when my sister was recovering from an illness, he beat her again so that if neighbors had not gone in to save her, she would have been killed. We heard of it and did as you have been told. The law of Umuofia is that if a woman runs away from her husband, her bride price is returned. But in this case, she ran away to save her life. Her 2 children belong to Azuulu. We don't dispute it, but they're too young to leave their mother. If, in the other hand, Uzuulu should recover from his madness and come in the proper way to beg his wife to return, she will do so on the understanding that if he ever beats her again, we shall cut off his genitals for him. The crowd roared with laughter. Evil Forest rose to his feet and order was immediately restored. A steady cloud of smoke rose from his head. He sat down again and called 2 witnesses. They were both Uzuulu's neighbors, and they agreed about the beating. Evil Forest then stood up, pulled out his staff, and thrust it into the earth again. He ran a few steps in the direction of the women. They all fled in terror, only to return to their places almost immediately. The 9 Igugu then went away to consult together in their house. They were silent for a long time. Then the metal gong sounded and the flute was blown. The Igugu had emerged once again from their underground home. They saluted one another and then reappeared on the Elo. Umuofia Kuwenu, roared Evil Forest, facing the elders and grandees of the clan. Ya, replied the thunderous crowd. Then silence descended from the sky and swallowed the noise. Evil Forest began to speak, and all the while he spoke, everyone was silent. The 8 other Igugu were as still as statues. We've heard both sides of the case, said Evil Forest. Our duty is not to blame this man, or to praise that, but to settle the dispute. He turned to Azuulu's group and allowed a short pause. Azuulu's body, I salute you, he said. Our father, my hand has touched the ground, replied Azuulu, touching the earth. Azuulu's body, do you know me? How can I know you, Father? You are beyond our knowledge, Azuulu replied. Now, if you feel like you are hearing the same thing over again, you are. It's like part of their tradition, this repetition, this like exchange between them. I am Evil Forest. I kill a man on the day that his life is sweetest to him. That is true, replied Azuulu. Go to your in-laws with a pot of wine and beg your wife to return to you. It is not bravery when a man fights with a woman. He turned to Adakwi and allowed a brief pause. Adakwi's body, I greet you, he said. My hand is on the ground, replied Adakwi. Do you know me? No man can know you, replied Adakwi. I am Evil Forest. I am dry meat that fills the mouth. I am fire that burns without maggots. If your in-law brings wine to you, let your sister go with him. I salute you. He pulled his staff from the hard earth and thrust it back. Umuofia Kuwenu, he roared, and the crowd answered. I don't know why such a trifle should come before the Igugu, said one elder to another. Don't you know what kind of man Uzuulu is? He will not listen to any other decision, replied the other. As they spoke, 2 other groups of people had replaced the first before the Igugu, and a great land case began. This chapter, it seems kind of random and boring, and kind of is random and boring. We know that, it's just another way that their language and their communication is really meandering. There is, of course, a deeper meaning behind it and a deeper reason for it. But one of the biggest reasons why it's in there, I think, is just to give us kind of a glimpse of their judicial system, the way that they kind of handle disputes. Again, to kind of break our Western stereotype of African nations as just being savage, disorderly, anarchy, lawless, like, tribes or people. So they do have, like, a system in place. Okay, that's it for chapter 10. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you back when we start reading chapter 11. Bye.